Hello, Brandon.
Hi Max, how are you doing?
Good, good.
Yes,
Thank you.
good, good to
Uh,
finally meet you.
yeah, likewise. I always love to talk to people that do something positive in this world and, have a positive impact on society. There's a lot out there, but not that many. There's always that fine line between just, focus on making money and stuff. And so, it's good that you're on. And I always like to understand the human, of course, right? That's behind, that social persona, the personal brand, and what really goes on there. So, like, wherever you want to start with your journey, what brought you here to where you're at, like what the turning points were, where stuff maybe didn't work out well, all that good stuff.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah, I think my journey's been ongoing for a long time, and I feel like it's probably in the past year that I've sort of become the person I want to be, and I'm in the place I want to be. Um, forever, forever, pretty much. I always wanted to sort of have more of a family life, work from home, um, sort of be able to make my own decisions. And I wasn't doing any of that before COVID. And before COVID, I did a lot to do with like photography, videography, and things like this. That was my thing that I did. I made videos, made wedding videos, different things like that. And all that stopped when COVID happened. And obviously, we needed to find something else to do. We were stuck at home, and I became quite obsessed with hypnotherapy. Me and my now business partner sort of used it. I was someone that was skeptical about it. I didn't believe it would work. I was one of those sort of people that sort of thought, oh, it wouldn't work, and it did work on me. It was good, and I ended up building Clear Minds, which I'm sure we'll speak about. And it sort of flourished from there. It started as a very small thing, and then at first it was something to keep me busy, also to keep the roof over my head, and do something that would obviously sustain the family. And then it became more of an interest, and I became really sort of involved with it, as I am today. And it became more of who I am. Like now, where we went from focusing on sort of building a business to actually building something. Like we went from building, it's hard to say, like something that was, we were trying to build a product, and now we're trying to build like a lifestyle and a community and things like that. And we obviously love what we do. And yeah, I think I've gone from the person I always sort of wanted to be, this person that worked online, had, did something meaningful. And the next stage after that was having a social presence, and the social presence being something that helped people. I always looked at people on YouTube and Instagram and thought, oh, I'd love to do that. Never actually did. And then it was November last year, and I was speaking with Alistair. I went over to visit him. We were working on the website, and we were talking about having a social presence. So both me and him made an Instagram. Mine's obviously Brandon Clear Minds. His Alistair Clear Minds. And we decided, right, we're going to be the face of the company rather than just building it in the background. And it's brought a lot of enlightenment to both of us. We both really enjoyed it. We didn't think we'd enjoy it as much as we did, and we also didn't think it'd blow up the same way we did. We thought we'd be sort of just making it work and stuff. And people really, I think what we did is, when we made it, we really didn't have any expectations, so we just did exactly what we wanted to do. And people liked it. People followed it, and from there it's just become something that it's like an extension of something we really enjoy.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's because you speak your truth in a sense, right? Like sticks to the topics that he probably lived through, as well. And that's
Yeah,
how it resonates. I mean, with me as well, I've been testing like a bunch, before I was doing like different stuff, like ecom and
yeah,
that kind of world I was in, and trading, like in not like financial, but different products and stuff like that, right? And distribution. And
yeah,
so it was always clear, you have to test, right? And see what works and what doesn't work. And it's just interesting, like that stuff that you actually live through yourself, it just resonates differently. It's a different energy behind it, right?
yeah. It is. and
Yeah.
and you say about ecom, which is funny, because when we were building Clear Minds, obviously it wasn't really working for a very long time when we started, and we were actually doing ecom as well at the same time. We were doing like this type of other ecom product that we were selling at the time, and Clear Minds was something just ticking over that we sort of really put. You'll know what it's like with ecom. you build a website and you build things. And we sort of did that. And then on the Clear Mind side, we did it how we really wanted and really felt. And it took a while to get going, but once it did, obviously, it just took over.
No. Yeah, it's a different thing. I think the older we get, the more we look for something, that has a purpose, that has a meaning, right? Like to me, that
Yeah,
that
certainly.
that transactional stuff just didn't interest me, and because of my drug use and because of my numbness, like I just kind of thought it was okay doing it, right? But like there was literally zero interest in it, right? And like I was always that person that was supposed to be of service. Like I grew up in a family, of doctors, and medicine was always around me, Western medicine, Eastern medicine. And so that was all like basically, since childhood, I was interested in these topics, but I never used them to actually help people, right? Like I always had homeopathy, just all over the place. Like here, this cupboard is full with it, books around that stuff. And, I know a lot and I didn't think I knew that much, to be honest, right? Until I started working with people, which is super interesting because like that just fulfills you in a different way, right? Like when you see, I mean, you're the same thing with you when you hear these customer success stories, from your members or clients, just makes a good day, right?
Yeah, it, it,
Yeah.
it makes you feel good, and it's something. I think you're right. I think when post COVID, at first there was a fear of like, okay, we've got to make a living. Things are uncertain. But as soon as you get to a point of like, I can pay the bills, after that, anything else is just surplus, and you're not that interested. You're just sort of the things that actually make you feel happy, make you feel good, is when you get those sort of stories of how things help them. And one thing I love is we've got a community, and in that community, I've got my parents, I've got my wife's parents, I've got my sister, and I love it when I go around to their house and they tell me about one of the community members that's somewhere else in the world that like, they did this or they did that and things. And it just, yeah, it makes me feel good.
How do you do that with the community part? You use like, I don't know, school or?
We no for the community. So the app's obviously just on the App Store. The community is just a closed Facebook group
Hmm.
for the users of the app. So the app, obviously, they can get on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, and then once they join the app or they join through the website, they get prompted to join the support group, which is like an emotional support group. And in that support group, obviously, it's all different members. Obviously, some of them will be past members as well,
No.
but there's 90,000 active members in there, and it's somewhere. We strictly ruled out that obviously, if you want tech support or anything, that you have to contact us. It's solely emotional support. So it's become a place where people have met up from the group as well. We see pictures where people actually
Nice.
meet up in like do like cold swims in the sea and all sorts of things. So it's quite cool.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's just a ripple effect, right? When you do something that's meaningful, right? You just kind of, maybe you help one person, but then you help 10 more or 20 more afterwards, right? Like that's also what I love about my work. I don't just help one person, like I help the whole family, right? And then
Yeah,
probably the
of course.
generation after, as well, you change lives, and that's a beautiful thing about it, because that just has a different energy to it, right? Than just selling a product online and then seeing that your Stripe account blow up. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
why do you think we live in that society where success is just monetary for loads of people? Like, what do you think that stems from?
I think it stems from obviously people could put a number on it. So obviously straight away people see money as a way of marking their success. But I think generally it comes down to people's need to consume. And that's something that I've really sort of stepped away from in the past years. Is I think that obviously people the way we're heavily marketed to, and I think you'll know, obviously having a background in ecom, marketing's everything, and the product's not always where the value is. The cost is the marketing, and these big companies spend so much on marketing, and they do it from a young age. So people, want the latest iPhone, they want all these different things, and we spend a lot. Obviously, in order to get those things, you have to spend the money on them, and I think that obviously all these different things obviously they're a status symbol of what the person can afford, um, and I think that's where it comes down to. And I think that you'll find that a lot of people that are genuinely happy won't pin themselves to brands and different things. And I think a lot of people, even related to your background, I think a lot of people, when they come out of things like addiction and things like that, they'll often stem to like attach themselves to like some sort of like collection or buying different things or try to fulfill the need through shopping or different things, or like buying things. Because obviously every time you buy something, it might give you a little bit of a sort of
Dopamine.
a dopamine, a bit of a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with it. And obviously, if the item's more expensive, it probably maybe lasts a few minutes longer or something.
Oh yeah, it's real for sure. Yeah, I think I just did a podcast, the one that came up like last week. It was about mind control and programming. If you want to check it out, super interesting with Jason Christoph. It was exactly that, like where does it start and where does it end? Us as children, we already get bombarded with all of that, marketing so called, right? But like it's much more than that, right? It's that repetitive content, right? Like you think this is what it's supposed to be, right? You watch all these movies where these people that have loads of money, they're the bad guy, right? And then
Yeah,
people that have no money, they're the good guys, and so on and so forth, right? Like it starts there, and then you have these Disney movies where the parents there's always one parent missing. It's either an orphan, right, or they die.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
give these movies to our children, right, when they're 6 years old, even less than that.
yeah,
Just crazy. It's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's where it starts, right? And I think it's an interesting topic, right? Like this could just be a podcast by itself, but money is a driver in the society, but in the end, it's energy, right? It's an energy that's sadly linked to something that they can kind of print out of thin air, and we're still exchanging our time and energy for it, right?
Yeah, yeah. It is that, and obviously, I think that comes down to when people get to a stage where they have more money. Obviously, they can buy more energy from other people and manipulate situations, and it could be a sad situation for people that are in, like I was during COVID, in a sort of time of struggle. It can cause a lot of stress.
Yeah, for sure. but struggle is good. I think it's needed. Yeah, let's talk about clear minds. Like how did you like start? Yeah, I assume you probably started somewhere and then you changed a bit and you navigated in a different direction. Like talk me through that.
Yes. So Alistair obviously, he told me about hypnotherapy. I'd never tried it. It was during COVID. I was quite stressed. There was a lot going on. And he sent it and said, try it, works. So I went up to my room, put on a hypnotherapy session, just some random guy. And it was one for stress. And I laid there on my bed during COVID, obviously thinking this is just not going to work. I'm just going to waste 20 something minutes of my time. I laid on the bed and he's talking, doing the things where they sort of say, like basically talking you down. And then I realized at the end of it, he said, right, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes and I'd sort of been in that sort of like trance, like hypnotic state. And again, I'm not someone trying to sort of like, I would have never believed it would have worked for me. And it really did. And I felt really calm. I just lied there really still, feeling really chill. And I thought, wow, that was good. And I started using different hypnotherapy sessions, just all random different ones. And I was doing ecom, like we spoke about. And one of the problems that happened during COVID was obviously it was shipment problems and different things like that. And I was all this time I was getting stressed, and I was using the hypnotherapy session, and Alistair was using it for his own reasons as well. I mean, I'm sure you'll discuss it with him at some point. And then it was coming up to New Year, and me and Alistair were there. He actually quit smoking. Obviously, he went on to have other issues after that as well, and sort of had them ongoing. But he quit smoking at the time, mainly due to fitness that he was working on. And we decided, he used hypnotherapy to quit smoking, and we decided to build a website and a package all around that. So we contacted a hypnotherapist. He made us, who we actually work with today. He works for Clear Minds, and we bought a few sessions off him. We built this package. We worked with him, and it was all like a quit smoking package around New Year. We thought this will be cool. Loads of people want to quit smoking for New Year. Let's do this. So we built the website. It was clearmindshypnotherapy.com rather than clearminds.com at the time. And we sold it on, we made some Facebook ads, made some little videos. Alistair made some. We put them out and we sold quite a few. But it was just ticking over. It wasn't like an instant boom.
Yeah, but you were
And
profitable.
then yeah, we were profitable. We were still working on other things, We were like, and this was out of my garage at my old house. This was actually one of those cliche things. Because during COVID, my daughter, which I'm sure we'll speak about, she's very vulnerable, like her immune system. So we were quite careful, and I was very careful. And my garage was like, it was like a duplex house, and it was like under the house. So we were like, you drove into it under there. So we were working from there. And what happened is we were selling the sessions, and we were making a little bit of profit. We were pretty much just spending what we were making. It was pretty much just covering itself. And then people started to email in now. Yeah, that's a great thing. That's a great thing. I mean, most people, you can wish for that in sometimes, but then people started to email in and say, oh, could you do one for this? Could you do one for that? And we were like, okay, well, 1 second. And we'd speak to our hypnotherapist and be like, could you do this? He's like, sure. Yeah. We didn't really know much about it at the time. We weren't in that circle. Like now we sort of know a lot about it. Anyway, one person said, I've got a problem with alcohol. Could you do one for alcohol? And we were like, okay, yeah, just same thing. And we spoke to the hypnotherapist, sure, we can do one for alcohol. And it came through. It's like, cool, that's good. Called it Control Alcohol Consumption. Put it on the website, put an ad up, woke up the next day, got a few sales. And then a few days later, it was like selling, I kind of explain how many it was. I woke up and it was like, we'd sold hundreds of them. And I was like, what's happening here? And basically it was that was the catalyst, I think, coming out of COVID, and it wasn't planned at all. But basically, there was a lot of people had drinking problems coming out of COVID, being at home, drinking earlier, and finding something to do. And that session was one. It wasn't only just effective, but it was obviously it was the right product at the right time, all by chance as well. Like the way it came around, we wouldn't have built that if that wasn't the person that asked for it. And yeah, that just propelled the whole company. So then we end up bringing on the hypnotherapist, building all different sessions, and that eventually, because we were just selling the sessions on a website, we didn't have the funds to build an app. And then eventually we contacted a developer, built an app, and now we've got obviously the app. We've had over 900,000 customers, and we're in 5 languages. So
what languages are you doing?
English, Spanish, German, Dutch, and French.
Nice. What's English strongest, probably? Yeah. English
is the strongest by far. Yeah. It's the strongest
by
far.
Side of things.
It's quiet.
Yeah.
It's something we do mainly just on the app, but the reason we did German, we chose German because there's a lot of German people, a lot of them like sort of speak English, but we found we get a lot of German people buy our English sessions on our site, so we thought we'd make a German one. We contacted a German hypnotherapist called Jennifer. She's fantastic. She built the sessions, created them, translated them, sort of made her own versions of them that fit. And we have quite a few German app users. We don't actively really push ads for it. We more just direct German people to the German side. And I think that's something we're going to look to sort of do more in the future.
Yeah, it's an interesting market for sure.
Yeah. I'll sign you up when we come off this.
Yeah, I think it's obviously I have family there still and a lot of friends and understand the market very well. And it's one of these areas in the world where there could be so much more done, which was also one of the reasons why I kind of left again. I think, I moved out of Germany when I was 15, came to the UK for a couple of years, and, was all over the place, South America, and traveled a lot, and went back when I was like 25 for a couple of years and left again, right? That was kind of just the overall theme. And it is just one of these places where I know it's like there's so much more possible, but people are really, mind controlled, probably, I would say, right? Like it's very, very deep.
Yeah.
We have the obviously World War II kind of influx still, right? Like it's generational, and there's a lot of work to do there. A lot of work, because I get asked a lot, because why I do my stuff in English. It's just for me, I want to have like the biggest impact eventually. And I prefer to talk about topics in English for some reason. I did my uni in English, I did school in English, so it's probably the main reason. And German is so cool, but yeah, it's definitely a market that's there's going to be a lot of work for me and for you guys for sure. More even coming up now soon. Just I think the developments there, it's not good.
Yeah, I think so. You're from Munich, aren't you?
Yeah, I was born there.
Yeah, I was in Munich for my friend. He got married to a Portuguese girl, and he decided to have his bachelor party in Munich. So we went to, it's a group of friends. They're all like either musicians or doctors. So it's an interesting group of friends. And we were there in Munich. It was really, really nice. And I had an uncomfortable thing in Munich because we went to it was just outside Munich. We got a train. It was, I can't remember what it was called. It was like a massive swimming bath with like slides and different things. And there was also a nudist part as well, which was something that obviously,
Sauna.
like, I think,
It's normal, yeah.
yeah, it was like, it was huge. It was huge. It was almost
Were
like
you in the East in Erding?
Eastern Eden. I think that's it.
Yeah.
And it was something I was sort of, I ended up not going in. It was, I think it's something like British people are like, oh, wow, okay, maybe
Yeah,
not.
it's normal in Germany. So,
Yeah, it's very normal.
yeah.
And I think that's something I probably need to look internal about why I've got that problem. But yeah, I thought I'm not going in there, and sort of stayed to the other side. But yeah. So
yeah, you don't wear anything in the saunas. Like it's also like that's super interesting because like I spent some time in the States as well, and like people go, with like a towel, sure you use a towel, you put a towel under you, but you don't wear any pants, or you don't, because it's kind of like it's more hygienic, and more clean if you actually wear nothing, right? Like it's interesting, but
cultural difference.
Yeah, for sure. But that's a good point, like why do we carry like so much shame, right, around like something so natural,
Exactly. That's what I thought, and it was confusing because I felt so uncomfortable. I thought I'm not going in there, and there's no real reason to. There was other people there and things like that, and I just thought it's a strange thing. And obviously, especially like you say, culture in the UK, in the US. I mean, I think very little people would go and do that straight off the cuff. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, because we don't grow up like this, right? Like my son, he's just swimming out naked. Like he doesn't even think about it, right? Like something happens after that.
Yeah, it sort of switches, and then, but yeah, it's interesting.
For sure. So on the platform, do you also do live sessions, or is it all pre-recorded?
We do. It's all pre-recorded on Clay Minds. We're looking to do some live sessions at some point. We're sort of like developing some things that we're looking. We're going to be doing some yoga and Pilates. A lot of our users, obviously, they're into wellness, and they're improving, obviously, themselves through all different things. And we're going to be looking at doing yoga and Pilates. We're going to start with pre-recorded. We already do some home workouts. We've got she's 2-time Miss Universe, a woman called Debbie. She does the home workout sessions. And we're going to look at doing some yoga, Pilates, and then hopefully at some point some sort of live sessions. But we've just got to sort of plan it, because obviously there's people all over the world and sort of tech issues that we want to get right. So.
Yeah, it's not easy. But what does your like typical customer look like, or member look like the avatar?
Okay, so yeah, we obviously we want to have as many customers in all different areas as possible, but our main customer seems to typically be female, majority female, and then generally between the ages of sort of 35 and 60, which is interesting. We obviously focus on trying to get younger customers, and I think we will get there in the end with getting those younger customers, but they generally seem to be slightly sort of older females is the general. Obviously we have everyone, but most of them are sort of slightly sort of that demographic, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that. Would have thought probably like 25 to 40 was my guess, more in that range.
Yeah, I think because we do have some, and we've tried it before. We've tried to get them, and we do have some there, and the ones that have it use it. I think it comes from also the way we sort of, when we had that first product, the alcohol product, we sort of, that was that demographic that went for it, and that was, like I said, just by chance. And I think we sort of just followed that. We've almost put a bit of a limitation on ourselves, and we've almost then built some of the design, some of the products around that demographic. And that's obviously because that's what worked at the time.
Sure.
We are going to be doing some stuff more on, like, we're going to be working with some elite athletes and doing some sort of mindset things around sports. That's obviously going to definitely be focused on different demographics, obviously a little bit more male and female, and obviously definitely a bit younger. So I think that should open it up a little bit as well, and also be super interesting.
And do you know if they have family, or if they're single? Like, you're still going back to that.
Most of them have family. Most of them have family, and a lot of them that we find, a lot of their family use it. So like my family, me and my wife use the hypnotherapy sessions. We use our app every night. Also, my daughter does as well. So we put it on. She uses one to go to sleep, and it works really well. So after we read her a story and sing some songs and stuff, we put it on, she goes to sleep. So we find that a lot of the people that use it, obviously some people come on and use it and then it's not for them, and that's fine. But the people that actually use it and they become a proper app user, they usually end up sharing it around their family.
Okay, nice. And then how does it work? You have one membership and they can access all of these sessions, or can you just buy
Yeah,
one?
so I think there's a slight limitation on the amount of people that can sign in with one. I think it's like three devices, something like that. It might be five. I'm not sure. We decided not to like put a limitation on it because obviously some people have like their phone, their iPad, or whatever it might be, or their partner's phone. But yeah, you just have one membership. They can pay like monthly, annually, and they get full access and they can use everything basically.
Yeah, because so the alcohol product is still probably a bestseller.
One of, definitely, yeah.
One of, yeah.
I mean, it's the typical things of what people have problems with that is the main thing. So we have alcohol's obviously a big one. It's a real big one. Things trend, like obviously like vaping and nicotine, mainly around New Year. People really sort of use those sessions more. And then the other one's always mindset around food and diet. So obviously changing that, like sugar addiction and things like that. That's probably the other most popular one. And then after that, it goes into all the different mental health topics generally.
Yeah. So is it basically, repetitive content that, slides into your subconscious? Is that the basis of it?
Yeah. So most of the sessions, they have like an introduction that brings you down, and then the hypnotherapist will speak to you and obviously speak to your subconscious and generally rewire your brain in a positive way. So we have general hypnotherapy, which is that, like, speaking obviously in a positive way. We also have some sessions that we've been sampling, which Catherine built, one of our hypnotherapists, that are aversion hypnotherapy, which we've never done before. And aversion hypnotherapy, for anyone that doesn't know, is basically where you speak negatively about something. So to leave a horrible sort of thought on something. So aversion hypnotherapy is not something you do, for example, realistically with something like, I don't know, a situation or an emotion, because obviously it could really adjust the way you act around people or different things. But like, it's something like, for example, cigarettes, never going to be healthy for you, never a good thing to have. So obviously having a negative reaction towards wanting to smoke is obviously going to be positive for you. So we mainly focus it around like nicotine and alcohol.
Yeah. And my work is basically the holistic approach, right? Like, so to me, the stuff that you do is like a small part when someone comes to me, right? It's because it's just the mental, right? Like, I think, if you really want to be successful with addiction, you have to look at everything, right? Like, especially sustainably free from it. Like, how do you look at that? Do you pinpoint people then to do other work as well? Like, what's your approach there?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on the person, like, and what they're looking for. So we definitely pinpoint them to sort of have a whole, like, healthier lifestyle. Obviously, what we do is just a small tool and part of it. Obviously, in people using that, it's sort of also a commitment to make a change. So, for example, a lot of people wanting to change their diet, for example, will obviously, speak to them, and on the group, everyone motivates each other to go on walks and do different sort of active, healthy exercise. It's not just a case of using hypnotherapy and that's everything. The same when it comes to alcohol. It's a case of, you've got to fill the void somehow. So, the hypnotherapy can help you stop, but then you've got to fulfill it with other things that you want to do and things, obviously. But, most people, when it comes to addiction, they're just numbing out something and try to sort of avoid a situation or just obviously feel something from it. So generally, when it comes to like overcoming addiction or anything to do with alcohol, we generally sort of have other things to help them and speak about. We also have 24/7 live chat on the website, so people can speak to us as well.
Nice. Yeah. So when they have questions, they can fall back to you. Yeah. Smart. Nice. Okay. I mean, what do you think this journey is going with this? Like, what's your outlook on it? What's your vision?
Well, my vision, obviously, generally with Clear Minds, is to make it as accessible to everyone. That's why we did the languages. We want people to be able to try it. use it. That's why we offer a free trial. So we want people to use it. We want to build it to be an all-round, like a one-stop place where people can work on their meditation, their hypnotherapy, breath work, home workout, yoga, Pilates. So almost like something whereby it sort of all their sort of mental wellness needs in one app. And we want to be very community based. So we want to be able to build it around what people want. That's the focus. And like I said before, I think at first we were building around sort of like demand and different things, and that we'll still do that. But we want to build the app and build the product to make something we're proud of. I think one of the things that's important to me and Alistair with Clear Minds is when we first started building it, it was all about try to build something to have an income when we very, very first started, and now it's something where we're proud of it. It's sort of who we are. That's why it's in our Instagram things. It's Alistair and Brandon Clear Minds. It's because it's part of who we are. So I think our goal, it's almost like a legacy of ours that we want to build something that people use. It opens up the industry of hypnotherapy mindset, and we can hopefully meet people, experiment with different things, run tests, and sort of have a real impact on people's lives.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, that's what it's all about. I think that's what that midlife crisis oftentimes hits. When you're like 45, in your early 40s, and you just been working in finance. You're like, fuck, what did I even do these last 20 years? Yeah. Like so meaningless.
Exactly.
Right? I have countless people in like my field, and just always the same. It's mostly when people work for somebody else as well, right? Like it's always that epiphany that comes later.
Yeah, it does.
Sure. So you mentioned your daughter before. Like, talk to me about that a bit. For us men, life changes. For women clearly as well, right? Like when we become fathers, it's just a different game. Everything has a different perspective. Everything looks different to us. Like the reason why we do things changes. Just life basically does a 180, right? If you want to be a conscious father and you want to be there for your child, right? There's clearly other options as well. But if you want to be that, then if you want to be there for your child, then everything changes. Well, how was that for you back then?
Well, it was quite a shock. Obviously, for those that don't know, my daughter Lily, she has Down syndrome. So she's 12 and a half, and obviously she's awesome. But I'd say mentally, she's probably somewhere around 5 or 6. She's progressing really well. Physically, she's not. Obviously, physically, she's a 12 and a half year old. But mentally, she acts obviously younger. She's definitely progressing quite quickly at this sort of age. But obviously, I'm 35 now. She's 12 and a half. So it was quite a shock, and we didn't know about the Down syndrome during pregnancy. So we were both young, obviously 22 years old, and we were having a baby very young. And we sort of had obviously these ideas of what that would be, and we had some friends that had them, some friends that didn't. And obviously the day came, it was the 13th of October 2012. My wife went, it was an emergency C-section, and there's a lot of trauma around all this that happened and things. But so they came out and they said, oh, the baby's got Down syndrome. And obviously, I know a wealth of things around Down syndrome now, but at the time I pretty much didn't know anything. I knew what a Down syndrome person looked like, but I was 22 years old. I didn't really know much about it. And so Lily was healthy. They took her off though. They took her to a different hospital, the main hospital here on the island. My wife's just had an emergency C-section. She can't move, so they leave her in this hospital. The hospitals are about 100 kilometers apart. They took Lily by ambulance, and then there's visiting times at both hospitals, and I'm like juggling going between the two. My wife's had instant separation from the baby, so I actually stopped them. She was obviously on, she just had a C-section, so she was on like medical drugs. And I said, no, before you take the baby, obviously the baby at the time, I not really met her. I wanted to see my wife. I didn't really know what was going on, because obviously it's like Down syndrome. Is she not well? Is she, and so they took her, and we were stood in this corridor, and they showed her to her, and she was like obviously a little bit delirious because she just had a C-section or medical stuff and stuff. She doesn't really remember. She sort of vaguely remembers it. And then they took Lily away. I said that it'd be okay to my wife, and she went away. And then I went into a room where I met Lily. I've got the photos where she's like really tiny, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember saying to her like, don't worry, I'm going to look after you forever. And I held her and said that, and she was crying. She stopped crying. I've got the photos, and it's amazing. And then they took her off to the other hospital, and I waited and I saw Emma, and it was all a very traumatic situation. And the sad thing is, obviously, Emma didn't get that initial bonding with her. She was also in a hospital, feeling loads of pain. She didn't really speak much Spanish at the time. We were still quite new to being in Tenerife. So she tried her best, but obviously didn't speak much Spanish. And it was just a difficult situation. Obviously, I got to go home on an evening, so I was sort of as fine as I could be. But I was between the two hospitals, and it was a huge. It went from we're having a baby to like, wow, it's like this influx of like all sorts, life changing. And then Lily was fine. She was born with a small hole in her heart, which was obviously a worry. But then it closed up on its own, and she was healthy. So they took her to the hospital. It was what they didn't know about that at the time. They took her just because obviously she was different, and they weren't sure. She was let out, and we had about 3 or 4 days a week. We went to different therapies like cognitive and physiotherapy and different things. Again, huge, like three times a week, driving like 100 kilometers to do it. But we did that, and she then obviously goes to a Spanish school. I think we were speaking just before the podcast, obviously before we went live, and she's actually gone on a school trip today to one of the other islands. It's the first time that she's been away from us and not been with like obviously one of our people that like sort of in a circle, like family members or something. So it's a bit of I dropped her at the bus just before this podcast started, and she's now going to be going to school, getting on a ferry and going to another island, and she's got like 2 days camping, which is, I'm like a little bit like this, but she'll be good. She'll be good. But yeah, she went to Spanish school. She speaks English and Spanish. She's not the clearest when she speaks, but she does good. Obviously, back to your question, obviously what it was like for us, it was a whirlwind, because obviously we went from seeing what it's like to have a baby. Everyone knows you have a baby, you nurture them, you do your best, they grow up, to, we've got a baby that we're going to need to nurture and do our best, but she's probably going to always be with us. Obviously, we just didn't, it was such we had to jump on like the learning curve of that very, very quickly. I think obviously we were still young. Obviously, you think you're so big when you're 22, but looking back, we were children, and I think we grew up very, very quick. We grew up very, very quickly, and we had to. Yeah,
life throws at you what you also need at this time, right? Like it's an interesting one.
Have you got 2 children?
Yeah,
twice as brave.
Yeah. The first one also, to me, it was early. It was just 30 at the time, or 29 when I knew about it, right? Which kind of, he came, in that year where everything changed for me. I was like in so much pain. I had like nerve pain and all that stuff. Which was kind of the catalyst eventually to change my life around, right? Which also, he came for a reason, right? And that's the beautiful thing about children, right? Like if you embrace it fully and you just, go with the flow, because there's nothing else to do, right? Like you have to take the hits, you have to take the learning curve, and you just have to go with it. It's fucking tough, right? And that's where a lot of, like parents or fathers oftentimes, give up, right? Like they leave the family structure and the family system because it's just too much, right? Because it's a constant work on yourself. It's a daily personal development journey. It never stops, right? Like it's relentless. Absolutely relentless.
It doesn't stop. Yeah. And then your friends that don't have kids will tell you they've not got time for things, and you're like, you've got time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly, your friend circle changes, right? Like I have just a couple left, from those times, and that's fine, right? Like I think friends come and go. Some will stay forever, and that's also cool. But yeah, if you want to build a proper family, then that should be your focus.
Yeah.
And if you want to lead it, right, like that's also just you being there is not going to do it, right? Like you have to lead the family
Yeah.
and just be the leader it needs, right? But you said before with the separation from the mother, that's like when I hear that, like it happens so often. They tried to do that as well with with our son and stuff, and just have to be in there, and then they make all that fuss about like emergency C-section, like it was the same thing with the birth of my second son, right? Like I was there and I was basically between my wife and the doctors, and I said like, don't fucking, there's time, relax. Like I told the doctors to breathe, I was there. It was a fucking mess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it worked out eventually, right? Like all worked out fine. But like if you go with the stressors of the doctor and you listen to their fear, because they're more fearful actually in their job than I was, right? Because I kind of knew what was gonna come. I understand how they're
Yeah.
thinking, I understand their business, how it works, and I understand their training, because I grew up with doctors, right? So I understand what they know and
Yeah.
what they don't know. And most of them, they once they finish their training, they don't, get any more training, especially if it's a public institution, right?
Yeah. Probably not.
So I knew they're not really familiar with, like that kind of work, right? So I was there, and at first they didn't even want to let me in there, right? But yeah, I think, that's a whole topic. But like, if we could kind of, go back to the more natural ways of birth and home birth and proper doulas around, like all that, I think would make such a big difference in the mental health as well of the children, right? Like, because
Yeah.
for your daughter, that was super stressful, and I know there's like plenty of work she will have
Yeah.
to do later on as well, right? To just like work through that
Mm.
separation from the mother, especially
Mm.
like when it's like so far away, right? And with everyone that gets a C-section, that separation happens, right? And it's a huge, that's a proper trauma, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and it is for my wife as well. It's something
Oh
that's
yeah,
that's
for
that's
sure.
not healed even now.
Yeah.
It was a traumatic time.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we can talk about that also after, because maybe I can, point you in a couple of directions with this, because I spent time thinking about this, and clearly you also have people that
Yeah,
that
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 would be
kind of
good.
heal that. Okay, what else? Let's talk a bit about, addiction if you want.
Yeah,
You clearly have a
yeah, that'd be cool.
business partner that's deep in it, or was deep in it and deep
Yeah,
in that topic still.
he's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like you, he's definitely involved in that, and I think um, it's not something I've struggled with in the past. I think we spoke about this a bit before. But I've seen it in him, and I remember seeing the change as well from him being, I'd say, obviously all addiction's bad, but from being more social to then being more introvert with it. And I mean, you'll see his online presence. I think he gets a lot of pride from helping other people as well. The company's definitely built that up, and obviously he's sober now, and he lives a really healthy life. And I can't really ever see him relapsing again. It's been quite a few years, and he also, with what he's doing online, I think, and you'll probably find it as well, like you said, when you're helping other people, I think his online presence is also helping himself. He takes a lot of pride in it. He posts things there. He does that. He got a lot of people speaking to him, and I think as well as him helping, like you, helping thousands of people around the world, he's helping himself with that as well, and that's nice to see.
Yeah, helping other people with what you worked through is like that last step. That's that last step in recovery, basically.
Yeah,
Once you've worked through your shit and you're really clear about, what your message is, and what you are, maybe you're in homeostasis even, right? Like you found your center, then it's time to give that back, right? To a lot of people, it's kind of like the calling. To me, it was as well. It was clear I had to stop everything I was doing before I kind of, went and started closing the companies and stuff. And it didn't even hurt that much, like other people would say, okay, why don't you sell this and that? Sure, whatever can be sold, yes, but just fucking draw the line and do something meaningful, right? Like the more you wait, the longer it's going to take for you to get to that place where you actually wake up and you do something that's really fun, right?
yeah, that's actually where you're meant to be. Also, my sister, she's huge when it comes to. She doesn't have an online presence, or she only has a normal one, like a normal sort of just posting to friends and stuff. And she struggled with addiction, um, all her life up until about 2 and a bit years ago. She went to South Africa. She went to a clinic in South Africa, actually, because we went to South Africa when we were younger as kids with my family. We went on a family holiday there. And on my mother's side, there's a few sort of distant family members there. So South Africa is somewhere is sort of a little bit close to us. And she went there to a clinic, and it was incredible. She turned around. She's actively involved in like the sober community over here in Tenerife. She's over 2 years sober, and she had and I mean her words are that she wouldn't be here if she hadn't have done that. So it's she also obviously speaks a lot with Alistair as well. She works within Clear Minds, and she speaks to Alistair a lot about it and things. And she had some real issues with herself, and she's really sort of the person she's become now is amazing in comparison to where she was. You know, she's sort of now like an inspirational person. Yeah, she's such a good person. Yeah. And when she was struggling with addiction, it that wasn't her, but she wasn't who she was meant to be, basically.
Yeah, that's the tough part about addiction, because like a lot of times, people are very empathetic. They can feel and sense a lot that goes on around them, right? Like a lot of times it's ADHD, whatever that is, right? But like it is hard to live this reality sober, right? To live in this realm like this, right? And that's oftentimes when people digress into, okay, I'm going to try this, and then, that's interesting. Like life is actually more smooth, right? Like it's a solution oftentimes, right? And that's the dangerous part about it when you start self-medicating, like in my case, because you want to focus, you want to fit in. Like that was my program and my subconscious, one of them. I always wanted to fit in because I was always on the sidelines. I even got kicked out of kindergarten group and stuff like that, because I would ask questions and like just needed more attention probably, right? And so then went to a Waldorf institution where there it was fine because we could always, spend time outside. But like the normal public system just completely fails people like us. Yeah. But it's, what you said before, once you start doing that work and helping other people, it fills that spiritual void, right? Which to me is the underlying theme of addictive tendencies, of addiction. It's a spiritual theme, right? It's a spiritual topic. It's not just mental health, right? Like that's why, working on the subconscious and hypnotherapy, right? And then reprogramming your mind and removing these blocks, which is also part of my work, but it's just a part of it, right? Like if you don't feed that spiritual void, if you don't fill that with the next big crisis, you will relapse. Just the way it is.
Yeah, you'll fill it with something else.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's just gonna right. Like you hear a lot of times, I'm sober now, but like the same people, they start a food addiction or sugar addiction, or they drink Coke for breakfast. Like how good is that? You're still gonna kill yourself, right? Or shopping, right? What we talked about before.
Yeah.
So
that's true. People.
Yeah. So that's that.
Yeah.
I think the spiritual
void.
Thing. Yeah, I think the spiritual void is a massive one. And, I keep talking about it. Just a couple of days ago, I try to follow like these industry veterans, right? That, been doing this for maybe 30 years, and they're very much on the Western medicine type of approach with addiction, right? But I think I can learn from anyone, right? So I follow them, and sometimes I comment something, and I just basically deleted my comments the other day because I talked about the spiritual void, right? And that's so interesting to me because, clearly there's something missing in their work, and clearly they kind of, in that tunnel vision, just because on one hand they have, let's say the medical research, right? That kind of supports their work, right? Which I think is valid, right? But like, what about all that part that you cannot measure, right?
Yeah,
or you can only
like
see
the subconscious.
Right. Like you cannot measure, you cannot put a number next to everything, right? Like you have to be open to these new possibilities, right? And then clearly I don't think it works in the short run. And then the long run, it works in the short run oftentimes, right? And then they say, okay, this is success for them, because then the patient leaves, but they don't see what happens afterwards, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like that in a lot of countries, especially like you say, Western countries, where it's a case of just using medication and not looking at like the root cause or how you can improve things with, outside of medication as well. Sometimes medication is obviously needed, it's important, but at the same time, obviously, so much can be done outside of just medicating people.
Yeah. Plus, like, what about all the side effects?
Yeah, side effects, and then addiction as well that comes with it, and yeah, so much,
Exactly,
so much.
exactly, exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
I kind of got diagnosed, with hyperactivity like when in kindergarten, right? So then, the doctors come up and they're like, yeah, you have to give your kid that medication. You have to give him pills. You have to give him speed, like the brain is not even developed yet. Like, what are you doing?
yeah.
I mean, I was
Then you're
lucky,
given that.
like I said, my parents they understood it, what goes on, and their kids, no, this is way too early. We're not gonna do that. So I got like horse therapy and some
Yeah, that's
other
good.
like NLP and all these things, right? Already when I was young, but like to me, that's also not deep enough. Like if you want to really work on these topics, you have to look at it holistically because you ADHD, especially, if you keep the term right, because I don't really like it that much, but like just so people understand what we're talking about, like there are ways of managing this without pills, and there are ways to manage this without drugs, right, and without
Yeah,
being numbed on some form of medication. There are ways to do this, right? Like and it's also one of my like life missions. Like I think this can be fully resolved, even though Western medicine says like there's a certain brain structure that was changed in you, and it's different from everybody else. If you look at the scans, I've done these scans, I can see where they're coming from. But I've also done psychedelics, and also worked with psychedelics, and done plenty of other things, and I know there are ways to basically work backwards, right? And you can
work
change
around it.
things. Yeah, you can change
Yeah, I
things.
think you'd have an interesting conversation with my partner Alistair because he's diagnosed. He was diagnosed very late in life with ADHD,
Mm,
and they diagnosed him and they gave him like medication like Ritalin and all sorts of different other medication. And I think at first he was taking it, and obviously that's sort of more for him to say. And then he was feeling terrible. Like he was messaging me like, doesn't feel good, or feel sleepy, or this, or different things, all different things. And I know he's working through something now with someone, and he's basically not using medication. He's using other techniques, and it's really, really sort of changed him. And I can see it as well. I can see it in him when I spend time with him
yeah,
compared to the ways like he was before with certain things. So yeah, you'd have an interesting conversation with him about that.
yeah, for sure. We'll do it. I think it's because that clearly is my one of my main topics that I think about on a daily basis, right? Because I don't take any medication anymore. I don't do anything and that sort. I try everything else. I've tried a lot. I think there's still more to test. But like before I work with anything on my clients, I always test myself, and clearly only if it works, I will also work with them right on it. And
Yeah, that's good.
so it's a holistic approach, and a lot of things have to go well and be aligned, and a lot of that stuff that's kind of lacking in your body maybe has to be supplemented, right? Just and then it's just management as well, right? Like how do you live your life? What do you do with your life? How's your
Yeah,
sleep? All these basic pillars, they have to align, and then slowly you can progress, because it's hard work, right? Like it's not easy at all. So that's why a lot of people just choose a pill.
yeah. Well, and as well, I think there's the white coat syndrome of being told to as well. I think obviously you're lucky that you've got a background where your parents are doctors and things. So when you look at a doctor, obviously you can relate to like your parents, and you can sort of understand that you can speak to them and things like that. Whereas a lot of people when they see a doctor, it's authority, and if the doctor tells you something about your health, that's what you do. And I think that's something that's quite popular. Is doctor says take a pill, you take a pill, and a lot of people just do that, and we know where that goes. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it can go down not the best path for people.
Yeah, it also goes the other way. I try to change my dad's mind, especially many times, and it takes a couple of years, but eventually he gets there with some topics. It's
Yeah,
an interesting one. Yeah,
yeah,
but so how did you end up on the island? Anyways, I didn't ask you that before.
yeah. It's an interesting one. Um, we we used to come on holiday here. A
Yeah,
lot of Brits come on holiday here. I mean,
yeah.
a lot of Germans do too. Like I speak to Americans, they have no idea. They're like, "What, a small island near Africa?" They think I'm living on some like crazy like outback island, but obviously it's like you know, it's quite a tourist destination. I don't live in that sort of tourist area, but
You in the
we came
north,
on holiday here.
east?
No, I mean, sort of like imagine where the south is, where the tourist area is. I'm about
Yeah,
half an hour out. I
yeah.
live just in the mountains there. Yeah, it's a good place. So when in the year 2000, both my parents were in the police in the UK. My dad was in the police for a very long time. My mum not as long, and my dad was on his way home from work when he was hit by a car. Basically, I haven't asked him. I can't remember if they were drunk or they were foreign, but they basically pulled onto the wrong side of the road. My dad was on a motorbike, and they just hit him direct on at 40 miles an hour, and it just threw him over the car. It knocked out a lot of his teeth, some deep cuts, shattered his arm, all sorts of different things. Lucky to be alive, and he was in hospital for a little while. Then he got better, and he was deemed that he could retire basically because of the injuries. So obviously that's him. If you imagine 2000 to 25 years ago, so he's 65 this year. Obviously that's at 41. It's a very young age to retire. Almost a few years younger. He could retire with obviously his pension and things, and also he got a compensation claim, meaning that obviously some money for his accident. Obviously it wasn't worth the injuries, but that happened. And we were coming on holiday a lot here, and we met someone that basically we found out there was an English school here, because obviously me and I guess that's an important thing is education, and there's an English school on the island. So my parents met them and saw there's an English school, and this sort of the idea grew about maybe moving here. My parents are retired; they don't have, or we're able to retire, and they end up looking at houses. End up speaking to someone at the school, and it's a good school, and we end up. My parents sat us down and they said, "Do you guys want to move to Tenerife?" We were like, "Yeah." Me and my little sister, and they were like, "No, seriously, if one of you doesn't want to, we won't go." Because it's a big move. Obviously, you're moving away from your friends and things. I was 15. I was just finishing my GCSEs, that sort of level of school there, and I was going to do my A-levels. I did my A-levels here. And we both said yes, and we took it pretty seriously. And it was a bit crazy, really, because obviously we had that connection that it was a holiday place that we really enjoyed, and we just said, yeah. We moved here. My parents, they sort of built the house, and I was going to go into the Air Force. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into the Air Force when I was younger. And I wanted to be a pilot. So I did my A-levels. I got everything I needed. I went back, did interviews, went on base, and I was like, I want to be a pilot. And I failed on one of these hand-eye coordination tests where basically you're doing certain things, you're doing maths things at the same time. And I failed just by a slight bit. And they said, well, you can't be a pilot, but you can be a weapons systems operator. And I was basically, obviously, I don't know if I was 18 yet. I think I was 17, nearly 18. I was just obviously no, I want to fly the plane. So they said, well, you can come back. You got through, because I got through the initial interviews. I got through all the fitness, everything. I was on base with 3 days or 2 days or something. And I was one of those, you're a kid and that's what you want. So I was like, nah, that's what I'm doing. So they said, well, okay, well, you've done all this. You can just come resit it in 1 year, but you have to wait a year between coming back. So I was like, okay. And then I came back here, obviously found a job, got into that, did loads of things. I ended up having building a business here and doing some things and just staying. And then obviously a year and a bit later, I met my now wife, or 2 and a bit years later, I met my now wife, and then I have my daughter, and then fast forward 12 and a bit years, and here I am.
No more army, no more weapons.
No, it's a good thing. Things happen for a reason, and funnily enough, so obviously I moved here 20 years ago, and that was obviously my goal, mainly just to be a pilot. It wasn't really about the army. It was more a case of a functional way to become a pilot. I sort of liked the idea of flying planes. And funnily enough, at the same time that I was looking to join the RAF, my wife in the UK that I didn't know at the time was looking at joining the RAF, and she got migraines. I don't actually know what she was looking to do, but she had migraines, and they rejected her because her father's he was in the military, and basically he said the RAF's good, this, and she was interested. She was going to join the RAF, and because of the migraine she didn't get in. So it's funny how things work, because had I have got in, maybe she would have got in. Maybe we would have met somewhere, and we didn't. We met here.
Yeah, there are no coincidences, that's for sure. That's for sure. The older I get, the more I know that. It's just super interesting. Yeah, beautiful stuff, man. So, yeah, I actually looked at the Canaries last year, because we're looking at different places at the moment as well, and it's a nice place. I just think it's overrun, right? It's just tourism is just blowing up.
Tourism is, well, it depends where you're looking. If you're looking in Tenerife, it's overrun. Yeah, I mean, it's a great for a holiday. It's great for a holiday destination. The locals are having a bit of a tough time because there's a bit of a housing crisis because because there's so many like holiday rentals. You know, all these people are coming in buying these holiday rentals. Tourists are flocking from everywhere buying a second home. And it's just pushing the locals out, which is sad. There's a lot of like false stuff on the news as well, where people are saying that these locals are walking around with like tourists go home and they're doing protests and stuff, and they're really not. The locals in the Canaries, I mean, I'm sure you live abroad. It's like they're the most lovely people. Like you can bump into them, and anywhere you speak to them, my neighbours, everyone, they're so friendly. They're so great with kids.
Like everywhere,
and they're great people. And there's all these, you see them on the UK tabloids about them like protesting against tourists, and it's such false news. There's nothing to do, it's a tourism island, and there's been some small, tiny, like literally like groups of people that'll be outside like a Congress building in the north of the island, nowhere near tourism, where they're basically they're protesting about a slight thing to do with holiday rentals and restricting it so that they can have homes, and they're making out that they're walking outside the hotels scaring tourists, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, it's always the same, that's how media works. But once you understand, how that whole like system works, and you don't really pay attention to it, but majority of people they do pay attention to that stuff. It's like
it's
the way it is.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think by age 20, 25 or so, I've already traveled like more than 35 countries or so, and usually I always stay there for a bit. I don't go just like there and then I stay at the hotel and at the pool. Like that was never that. I would always like check it out, go with the locals and live with them, and like stay in hostels and stay with the people. And if I could stay more than 2 weeks, 3 weeks, in most places I would stay a couple months, and it was a good time, right? And why am I saying this? It's because it doesn't matter which country I was in, the locals were always nice. That's the way it is. Like if you're not an asshole, and if you know how to behave, they're gonna treat you the same, right? Like it doesn't matter. I lived in Colombia as well. Yeah. Like people think about it like, oh my God, there's people, sure, there's people dying and being killed, but like that happens everywhere. Like it's not.
Yeah, of course. People get so, like Colombia and things. It's like, oh, it's dangerous. Well, yeah, it's dangerous if you want to become a drug lord or something, and you start stepping on gang members' toes and things and doing things like that. But if you're just a cool person that speaks nice to people, and and generally it's place. I find that with theaters,
plus you don't have to.
Pretty safe.
You don't have to be stupid, just don't put your fucking, iPhone that's worth, like the whole yearly salary on a table in front of you. Like, don't make it obvious. Like I was in Medellin for many months, I lived in Bogota as well. And you just, if you're stupid, then you will pay for it. It's just the way it is. Like there's one story that I think I told it once on a podcast. It was just when we arrived, and we were staying in Medellin with my ex-girlfriend's family at the time. And then we went to Bogota because of some work, because we were building a business back then. And we just literally got like completely robbed. Like the whole car got opened up. Like we were inside a factory, and just the whole car got robbed, and we didn't even notice it because they just opened it up. We went to the airport and we went to get our bags, and the whole place was fucking empty. Passports, like my girlfriend's passport gone, her laptop, like all the clothes and everything. But that's how it is, why? It was our fault, like you're never supposed to leave your luggage unattended. Just one rule, especially in South America, right? And in Asia, you just don't do that. It's always either your fault. It's 99% of the time it's your fault. Or it's like
it could be avoided.
Just really bad luck, right?
Yeah.
So locals are always nice, and doesn't matter which country you're in. I don't think I was ever in any country where they were weird. It's probably I think if you probably come to Germany and to some parts, I think that's maybe where you feel, okay, locals are a bit weird because it's very difficult to connect with people. but I guess
maybe,
yeah. But Bavaria is different, you especially if you're in Munich. Bavaria is a different. We're different from the rest.
Yeah, Munich was cool. I think people. I think I've been to Dusseldorf quite a bit, and
also cool.
And Munich, and the difference in the two places was I'd like to go back to Munich, whereas I'm not really a fan of. I wouldn't go back to Dusseldorf. anytime soon. But yeah, Munich was.
Yeah, Bavaria
nice.
is very, very much closer to Austria. Our whole way of living is closer to them. That's it. Yeah, beautiful, man. That was a good little session. And
yeah, it was
thanks
great.
for your time. Thanks for your input.
And, yeah, thank you. It was great.
I'll talk to you.
Great meeting you
on a different one.
Different topics. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for today. That was cool. That was interesting.